here we are back, this time to discuss the relations between science and religion. Because in my experience, this is one of the topics that tends to keep people away from faith. It's this idea that science and religion, they cannot go together, that they even contradict each other. That there is a choice that has to be made. Either you follow science and the scientific knowledge, or you follow religion. Those are two alternative competing explanations or theories to understand reality, science or religion. And so here, that's why I want to talk about it, because also I think there are a lot of misunderstandings in the topic. And so there are several questions that you could ask. So one question you could ask is, can you believe in God and at the same time be a scientist? Okay. Now the answer to this question is, in case you didn't know, is obviously yes. So there are enough examples out there. Both known people who were good scientists and who are good scientists and who believe in God, as more everyday scientists. So on the known people, two examples I would like to give is because these are two scientists that have had quite some impact on my way of seeing the relations between science and religion. One is Francis Collins, who was the former leader of the Human Genome Project. He's one of the biggest experts on quantum chemistry in the world and on evolutionary theory and genetics. He has a book which is called The Language of God, where he discusses how someone who believes in God, or how does the Christian faith can go together with evolution. Go together. He tries to show that there is no contradiction between the main claims in evolutionary biology and the Christian faith. So if you have questions about this is a good book to look at, I think. And a second scientist is who I would like to cite here is John Lennox, who is a professor in Oxford, and a lot of what I'm going to say today is based on talks, on papers, on books that he has written. I think he has a very clear mind, and he explains these topics of science and religion and faith in God and so forth very well. So that is another guy that you can go and check out. You will learn a lot from him. And so the question, are there scientists who believe in God, is yes. Just ask, Google, that's enough. But a second, more perhaps interesting question is, do these two things go well together? Or do you have to do some mental acrobacies, and do you have to be a bit crazy or schizophrenic to believe in God on one hand and at the same time be a scientist? Okay. Can these two things go well together? And so I think they do, and I will argue for it. And the way I will argue for it is, I think one interesting thing to do is to go and look at what the founding fathers of the modern scientific method had to say about these topics. People like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Isaac Newton, and so forth, to try to look at what they said about these topics. And the reason I think it's interesting to look at them is because in that time you could still be a homo universalis. You could still be on the frontier of human knowledge on very different topics, ranging from physics to biology to mathematics to philosophy to theology. You could know a bit of everything. While nowadays we are in the time of specialization. Okay, so you start some studies in the university, and the further you go, the more specialized you are. And so as time goes on, you know more and more about less and less about a specific topic, until at the end of your career you know almost everything about almost nothing. You know everything of a very little part of the human knowledge. And so it's difficult to have a broad picture across disciplines, But these people, the founding fathers of the scientific method, they did that. No? They had a broad vision. They knew about a lot of different topics. And so there, if you look at what they said, is there are two ideas concerning science and religion which played, I would say, a very important role even in the beginning, no? The constitution of the scientific method. And one idea that you can see from their writings is, first of all, they were convinced that there was that this universe was rational. That this universe was made in a rational way because it had as its cause a rational being. So there is a God who has created this universe in a rational way with laws. They were convinced there must be laws in the universe. And so this encouraged them not to do science, no? Because they expected to find laws in nature. Because this universe was made by a rational being, by a lawgiver. He had given laws to nature. And then a second idea, which played an important role, was that they were convinced also that we humans, we were made in the image of this God. We shared in the rationality of this God. And that is the reason why they thought we must be in a state of discovering these laws and understanding these laws. Because a priori you could think, okay, there are laws in the universe, but we will never know them. No? Just like a cow will never know the laws of physics, or a dog, they are not able to reach this level of abstraction. Well, perhaps we will never be able to understand nature. But they said, no, we are made in the image of God. No, we share the same rationality as God, okay? Even if it's way less, of course, but we share a part of it, so we will be able to understand nature. And these two ideas, they gave them a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of hope for doing science. So they were really a motor in the scientific revolution. So I want to quote just two texts to show why I think these ideas were present in their thought. One is from Johannes Kepler in his book The Harmony of the World, where he described what became some of the laws of Kepler, what became later known as the laws of Kepler. There he says, geometry, which before the origin of things was co-eternal with the divine mind, and is God himself, for what could there be in God which would not be God himself? So it says, it's a long preamble, it says, geometry supplied God with patterns for the creation of the world and passed over to man along with the image of God. So there you see, God created the universe in a geometrical way, he would say, Kepler, no? And this passed over to man along with the image of God. We are also in a state of understanding geometry and therefore of understanding the universe. You see? And then I have another quote which I think is interesting. It's from Isaac Newton, because after he published his Principia, his famous work, some scientists already at his time were trying to use this whole apparatus of classical mechanics to justify a materialistic interpretation of the world, or a mechanicistic, saying that God is not needed, everything is just following mechanical laws and so forth, and there is no need for God. No? We don't need God anymore. And so Isaac Newton, he was himself a very strong believer, and he was a bit annoyed by this attitude. And so in a edition of the Principia Mathematica, he added what he called a general scholium, a general addendum, some text as some reflections on his work. And there he says the following, to make things clear. He says, this most beautiful system of the sun, planets and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. This being governs all things, not as the soul of the world. He was also not a pantheist or something like saying everything is God, no? But as Lord over all. And then he also says in that same text, all that diversity of natural things which we find, suited to different times and places, could arise from nothing but the ideas and will of a being necessarily existing. God. So there you see that for Newton it's not that he discovered the laws of physics and then he said, I don't need God anymore. No, he discovered the laws of physics and then he was like, there is no other way that God must exist to explain where these laws come from. You see, so by studying science, he became not less of a believer, but he was even strengthened and encouraged to believe even more in the existence of God. Good. So, well, I think as a conclusion from what I have said until now, I think the two, science, believing in God and being a scientist and following the insights that we get from science, they are not incompatible at all. And they even go well together. They are not any more incompatible than what you would say. So to understand why, for instance, light bulbs exist, how they came into existence, you could say, okay, either you have to say it's Thomas Edison, which is the explanation for light bulbs, why light bulbs exist, because he invented them, or you could say, no, the explanation for light bulbs are the laws of electromagnetism, which explain how light propagates and so forth, and is produced in a light bulb. So these two explanations are not incompatible, no? They are both complementary, right? It's not that you have to choose between the Thomas Edison explanation and the laws of physics explanation to understand light bulbs. It's just they are answering different questions and they complement each other. And I think in the same way with our universe, it's not that you have to choose with either God or the laws of physics. No, it's the two that account for what we see around us. Good. So the two go together. There's no incompatibility between science and believing in God. And then one further objection that you could hear quite often is that, okay, you might still believe in God as a scientist, but it has to be a God that really doesn't intervene in the universe, no? That just creates the universe at some point and then it's done. So believing in miracles is ascientific, no? You could say. But here, again, I don't agree with this claim, because once you believe or you realize that the cause of the universe and of the laws of physics is God, there is an intelligence behind the laws of physics, it is very natural to think that the same God could intervene in creation. There is nothing preventing it. This same God who is the cause of the laws of physics, he could choose to, in specific situations, perform what we call miracles, precisely to reveal himself, as we Christians think that he has done. There is no incompatibility. The only reason why you would say that miracles are impossible is if you say God does not exist. If a priori you reject the existence of God, then okay, then you can argue miracles are impossible. But if God exists, there is no incompatibility and no reason to say miracles cannot happen. No, the same being who causes the laws of physics to be what they are can cause these laws to act in a different way at a certain point in time and space. No? Okay. Well, so to finish, the very last thing I would like to say is to summarize this whole video. Science and religion are not incompatible. I think even science without religion, that would be the most incompatible thing. And what do I mean by this is, for me, it strikes way more to reason to talk about laws of physics without talking about a lawgiver, no, without recognizing the intelligence that there is behind this universe. For me, that is what is really striking to reason, and what requires a lot of thought. No? How could there be laws without a lawgiver, so to speak? So, well, with this I finish this video. And in the next and last video, what I will discuss is another common objection to believing in God, which is the problem of evil and suffering, and how could God allow this. So we'll see each other in the next video.